Hi everybody, welcome back to another ROG Ally video, and in this one we're taking a look at a Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village as it is more commonly known. And what we're kind of trying to ascertain in these videos is quite simple really. I don't go into lots of different charts with performance and stuff like that, but I'm just kind of really trying to answer the question, is Resident Evil Village a good game to play in general? You know, so maybe if you could watch this video as kind of like a mini review of the game for any platform. Is it a good game to play on the ROG Ally in terms of the fact that, you know, this is a PC game and yet we're using a handheld PC that's got sort of gamepad controls? And how well does it run on the ROG Ally? And to answer the first sort of questions, Resident Evil Village, in my opinion, is one of the best Resident Evil games. In fact, it could well be overall, in terms of the overall gameplay experience of the main game itself, playing all the way through it, and the DLC, my favourite Resident Evil game. It really is absolutely fantastic. Now, I know that could well be controversial to fans of the series and say maybe, you know, the original games or maybe Resident Evil 2 Remake or something like that is better. But I think this is very, very special indeed, and it has some amazing set pieces. So it's a fantastic game to play. You can play it no problem on the ROG Ally. This is a Capcom game. They make AAA video games, concentrating mainly on console first. And so, of course, it has really good gamepad support. So, you know, it plays very well for that as well. Of course, it's been out for a couple of years now, so you can pick it up pretty cheap when it's on sale on Steam or on one of the various key sites. So the next question is, how well does it run on the ROG Ally? Now, remember, in these videos that I do about the ROG Ally, I have got here, this is a ROG Ally non-extreme version, which ASUS UK were very kind enough to lend me to play around with for a few weeks, and I've had it for about a month now, so I should be able to bring you lots more of these videos. And what that means is the majority of people out there are going to have the ROG Ally Z1 Extreme, which has the more powerful processor, so you're going to get better performance. However, with the ROG Ally non-extreme version, like you see here, what I do is, in fact, instead of running this amazing screen at 1080p, I'll knock it down to 720p, I stick it to 60 Hertz, and I found that is a way to get really good performance out of this device. Plus, all of these videos that I do where I'm playing these games and I'm talking about how well they play, I'm running them in handheld mode, so we're not plugged into any wires. We're in the 15 watt performance operating mode, which is similar to a Steam Deck. I haven't got CPU boost on because I do believe it's important to recognise, you know, this is a handheld gaming PC. You know, the reason why you buy one is so that you can play it away from a PowerPoint. So on your commute to work, on the train or on the bus, or maybe at work itself in your lunch break because you can't use your computer at work. You know, all these various reasons itself. And the performance, I mean, I'm in a very quiet area here, as you can probably tell, because I need to be able to talk and play the game at the same time. And we get sort of between 30 and 60 frames a second. We get the odd frame drop, and I've got to say, it's not quite as smooth as when I play this on the Steam Deck, but that's to be accepted with the ROG Ally because it is a Windows 11 PC, basically. And it doesn't have a dedicated operating system, which is all about, you know, the gameplay. But I think that, you know, this looks and plays very, very nicely indeed. So, if you're into your single-player games, if you're into single-player kind of linear games that are more on the single-player games that are more on the linear style, you know, where you go from A to B to C to D. You do have a bit of backtracking and wandering around, not quite as much as you would do in something like Resident Evil 2 Remake, for example, or lots of other Resident Evil games. And you have to sort of a little bit of survival horror, which means that you've got to, you know, conserve your ammunition, but Resident Evil Village is definitely more on the action side of that. Then I think you'll be very, very happy with Resident Evil Village. It really is, in my opinion, it's a really amazing game. And I love the fact that these undoubtedly AAA titles that, are from Capcom, a video game manufacturer that is at the top of the game. It's arguable that if does anybody make better video games than Capcom in this, in the genre that they make them in, and obviously the answer to that, for me anyway, is no. The fact that you can play this on a handheld device and it runs smoothly, looks great, is absolutely fantastic. So, if you're a Resident Evil fan and you're thinking about buying a ROG Ally, whether that be the Z1 Extreme or the non-Extreme like I've got here, and you want to make sure that games like Resident Evil Village run nicely, then don't worry about it. It definitely runs very, very nicely indeed. So that's a big tick in that box. If you've got a ROG Ally and you're thinking about buying Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8 to play, then go for it. Sometimes I think we kind of get caught into the trap that our handheld devices, they're all about the indie darling titles, and not the big 3D AAA games. But this clearly shows that, as long as the game is optimized correctly and you compromise on a few of the settings, in fact, I will go into the graphical settings I'm using in a second, you have a very good gameplay experience. And actually, before we look at the settings, I also want to talk about something that is probably not talked about enough about the ROG Ally, and that is the sound. It has this amazing sound. I don't know how it does it. It has almost 3D sound, the ROG Ally. The speakers are in a similar place to the Steam Deck, but often when you're playing games, it sounds like the sounds are coming from outside of the unit, which is pretty amazing. So let's have a look at the options. Let's go into the display. There you can see, so it's the AMD Ryzen Z1 version, not the Z1 Extreme. If you're wondering the difference, the only difference between the two is obviously there's a couple of differences. The first is the price. The Z1 non-Extreme should be much, much cheaper. And in fact, I don't think you can get them in the UK, but in America, if you keep an eye on Best Buy, they were selling these things at one point, not at the moment, but at one point they were selling them for $300, which was an absolute bargain, and yeah, fantastic. But it's the processor is the only other thing that's different. The screen is the same, the case, the controls, all that sort of stuff, the memory. It's just that processor, which means that the non-Extreme version, in my opinion anyway, you're better off running it at 720p and you'll get nice performance about it. And in fact, I wish I was a little bit more technical when it comes to this, but I think perhaps the fact that if you run these games and these devices in handheld mode, on battery mode, at 15 watt TDP, there may well be not that much difference between the Z1 and the Z1 Extreme, because being on battery mode, the processor on the Z1 Extreme can't take advantage of its extra elbow room, in order to be able to work harder, because it doesn't have the power to do that. So let's go down, full screen, 720p, 60 hertz, variable screen on the Ally, which means it's so fantastic. FSR is off, normal rendering mode, image quality 1. Let's go down. So texture quality high, that's probably the most important thing, isn't it? Texture filter quality high, mesh quality mid, ray tracing off, screen space reflection off, volumetric lighting quality mid, shadow quality mid, contact shadows on, shadow cache off, bloom on, lens flare on, film noise off, depth of field on, lens distortion on. There we go. So that's kind of the settings that I'm using. And although, yes, you do get frame rate drops, and Gamers Nexus, when they do their tests, are very, very good about this, because they explain the fact that what's important when you're looking at performance in any game device isn't necessarily the average FPS or the high FPS. It's how bad the drops can be. So it's when you go into a situation where something happens in the game, maybe it gets very busy or you move from area to area, and then all of a sudden you go from, say in this case, we're going along at 60 frames a second, and the game suddenly drops to like 20 frames a second, maybe only for half a second, but that can be very jarring if that happens. You don't tend to experience a lot of that in this particular game. Look how beautiful that screen looks. Anyway, that's enough from me. So if you're a Resident Evil fan and you're thinking about a ROG Ally, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8 runs very, very well indeed. If you've got a ROG Ally and you're thinking, should you buy this game to play it? What are you waiting for? Go and check to see if it's on sale on Steam. Buy it. It is absolutely magnificent. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hope you found this video useful. If you have, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And of course, I'll see you again soon.